Chapter 3. Motives. Our flight left an hour after school was out, ensuring we would arrive in Florida in the middle of the night. When I made a joke about not needing sunscreen, Bella looked at me almost apologetically, and I wished I had kept my mouth shut. I asked Carlisle to drop us off, since Charlie was only moderately okay with the situation, and I didn't want anything upsetting Bella this weekend. It was a chance for her to get away for a couple of days, forget the stress of her upcoming graduation and all she felt that entailed. I reminded her as often as I could that there was no hurry, and since we were talking about eternity, she needed to be completely sure. But she always repeated the same thing. Her mind was made up. Shortly after graduation, she was determined to make Carlisle follow through with his promise. Bella stared out the window dreamily for most of the flight, occasionally glancing at me with a look of pure love in her eyes. I wasn't sure if it was the simple fact that we were getting away, or that she was going to see her mother again, but it was the most at peace I had seen her look in a long time. Renee met us at the airport, and the moment she and Bella locked eyes, they squealed with delight and ran toward each other. I watched in awed silence as they grinned and hugged, both talking a mile a minute, probably not understanding a word the other was saying, but not caring because they were together. It was several minutes before either one of them seemed to remember I was there. Then, with a sheepish smile, Bella turned to me. "Mom, you remember Edward," she said tentatively. I could hear her holding her breath. "So nice to see you again, Renee," I said, using the fact that I was holding both Bella's and my own bags as an excuse not to shake her hand. The last thing we needed was for her to jump at my icy skin. "Edward?" she said formally, nodding at me once. I had forgotten how interesting it was to listen to Renee's thoughts. It was a jumble, much like Charlie's were, but I could hear coherent words and phrases every so often, and was surprised at how clear a picture it granted me. Polite, clearly cares, too soon, 17. It was as if Renee was in a constant battle with herself. She could sense how deeply I loved Bella, but was also frightened by that very fact. She couldn't let go of the notion that falling in love too young had no way of ending well. If only she knew how long I had been waiting for Bella, and how completely my devotion to her truly was. "Phil's sorry he couldn't be here to greet you," she said, turning back to Bella. "He has to be up at the crack of dawn tomorrow. He'll be working with the team all weekend, getting them ready for the big game on Sunday." "That's fine. I'm sure we'll find some time to talk." "That would be nice. Maybe I can make everyone breakfast Sunday morning before he has to head out." "Or you could let me cook," Bella said, a little too enthusiastically. I held back a chuckle as I thought of all the stories she had told me about Renee's cooking. "We'll see. For now, we better get you kids home. I'm sure you're both exhausted." It was a short car ride to Renee's house, but she and Bella managed to catch up fairly well. I'd never heard Bella so talkative. It didn't escape my notice that Renee kept glancing back at me in the rearview mirror. With so much of my time spent listening to people's thoughts and figuring them out, it was an odd feeling, knowing she was working so hard to figure me out. She noticed the way I watched Bella every second, and again she seemed to be arguing with herself over whether or not this was endearing or cause for concern. When Bella felt my stare, she reached back over her shoulder, and I gave her hand a quick squeeze, enjoying the way her heart sped up as soon as we touched. Renee's scrutiny only increased after the gesture, though her voice remained even. When we arrived, the two walked hand in hand inside while I carried our bags. Renee had made up the couch for me, and Bella was shown to the guest room. "Good night," Bella said, glancing back at me longingly. That look didn't escape Renee's notice either, and she eyed me cautiously as they headed up the stairs. A few minutes later, Renee came back down, and her mind was working overtime, debating on how much to say to me. I had to suppress a grin when I realized she was worried about me sneaking up to Bella's room. "I hope this is all right for you," she said, glancing at the couch. "And I'm right upstairs if you need anything else." Subtle. "It's wonderful. Thank you for your hospitality." "No, thank you," she said, her eyes instantly softening. "Thank you so much for bringing Bella out here. I miss her every day." "I'll pass the thanks along to my parents. It was their idea, and I'm happy we were able to make the trip. She misses you very much as well." "Really?" she asked, her voice almost shaking as she sat down beside me. "Of course. She talks about you often." "That's good to hear. Every time she calls or emails me, all I hear about is how happy she is. Obviously that's what I want. That's the most important thing. It's just it still seems strange to me, hearing that she's happy in a place I couldn't wait to get away from." She paused then, and I tried to listen to the path her mind had taken her on, but there were too many conflicting emotions and thoughts. "She didn't used to like Forks either," she finally continued. "She probably never spent long enough there to really get to know anyone. She has lots of friends now, and she likes school. And she has you." It wasn't a question, but simply a statement of fact, as sure as if she was telling me it rained a lot in the Northwest. "Yes, Bella and I are very happy together, and my family absolutely adores her. She spends a lot of time with Alice especially. It's fun to watch them together. Opposites in so many ways, yet somehow best of friends." "Yes, well, I'm glad she's doing well. Be careful. Slow down. Too young. So kind." The battle raged on for a few more moments, before she finally sighed and let her expression relax into a smile. "I'm sorry. I should let you sleep. I'll see you in the morning." Without another word, she stood up and walked quickly up the stairs. When I heard her door shut, my own internal battle began as I decided whether or not to go up to Bella. A part of me wondered if she was expecting me to, though we had already decided to spend the 2 nights here apart. While I had no doubt I could get to her soundlessly and unnoticed, I knew the idea made Bella nervous, and it seemed smarter not to take the chance. It was a very long night. I hadn't realized how much I had come to depend on Bella's presence to make the otherwise lonely, mundane hours pass by quickly. Early the next morning, I heard Phil coming downstairs, so I closed my eyes and leaned back onto the couch. "Bringing the boyfriend home to meet Mom. It's a wonder she's not more of a wreck." I inwardly smiled, watching him through half-opened eyes as he made himself breakfast. He was quiet and respectful, looking in my direction only once before heading out for his busy day. A couple of hours after Phil left, a door opened upstairs. I sat up and stretched out my arms when I heard the familiar sound of Bella's heartbeat. She was still rubbing the tired out of her eyes as she entered the living room, but as soon as she saw me, her face broke into a huge grin. "Good morning," I whispered as she curled up into my lap. "It is now," she giggled, her arms wrapping around my neck as she buried her face into my shoulder. "I didn't realize how hard it would be to sleep without you." "Well, after tomorrow night, I'll do my best to make sure you never have to again." She didn't respond, and when I glanced down, I noticed a pout on her face. "Are you rethinking our sleeping arrangements already?" I teased. "Maybe," she mumbled, and I felt her cheeks grow warmer. "If you want me to come up tonight, all you have to do is ask." "I'll keep that in mind," she said, nuzzling closer. I smiled and stroked her hair, comforted by the fact that even one night apart felt like too much for her. I felt exactly the same way. We sat in silence for a few minutes, enjoying each other's company, until Bella sighed and started to pull away. "I want to get breakfast started before Mom wakes up. That way she has no choice but to accept the offer." "And what will Renee say when I decline your gracious food offerings?" "Oh, well, you've already eaten, of course. My cooking is simply too delicious to resist," she teased. I followed her into the kitchen and watched in fascination at the way she knew where everything was. "Mom is such a creature of habit," she said, reaching for the frying pan. "Different house, yet everything is set up exactly the way it was back home." "Do you think she misses Arizona?" "You're asking me? You must have a much better idea than I do." "You'd be surprised," I muttered, not really wanting to get into the mechanics of Renee's mind with Bella. Besides, that's not exactly what's on the forefront of her thoughts. She stopped in her tracks and looked at me wide-eyed, her heart starting to race. "Is she upset? Does she wish I had come alone? Is she going to lecture me like Charlie?" "Hey," I said, crossing the room instantly and pulling her into my arms again. "Don't worry about it. She's fine. Just a little worried, that's all. She can tell how much we care about each other, and she's afraid we're too young." "If only she knew," she sighed, mirroring my earlier thoughts.